The message arrived on Earth without warning. A single beam of light cut through the night sky and landed in the middle of the United Nations headquarters. Inside the light was a small crystal cube. When the scientists touched it, a voice spoke in every language at once. The Kethrani Empire invites humanity to prove its worth. Send your representatives to Kethra Prime. You have 30 days. The world had known about alien life for only 5 years. Ships had passed through the solar system. Signals had been detected. But no species had ever spoken directly to Earth. Until now, the Kethrani were legends among the stars. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds. Their queen had ruled for 800 years. They were ancient when humanity still lived in caves. And now, for reasons no one understood, they wanted to meet. Commander Beek Sunwoo was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission. He was a calm man with steady hands and a voice that made people trust him. He had served in the military for 20 years and had spent the last 5 working with the new Space Relations Office. He did not smile often, but when he did, it meant something. His team was small, 12 people in total. Scientists, translators, engineers, and 1 cultural ambassador. They boarded the diplomatic vessel Horizon and left Earth behind. The journey took 3 weeks. When Kethra Prime appeared on the viewing screens, everyone fell silent. The planet was beautiful in a cold way. Its surface was covered in white and pale blue crystal formations that rose like frozen waves. Cities floated above the ground on platforms of light. Everything shined, but nothing felt warm. Park Yuna pressed her face close to the window. She was the youngest member of the team, a xenobiologist with bright eyes and a quick tongue. "It looks like someone carved an entire planet out of ice," she whispered. Her older brother stood beside her. Kang Doha was an engineer, quiet and thoughtful. He had been added to the team at the last minute because of his skill with environmental systems. He was not important. He was not a leader. He was simply good at fixing things. "It is beautiful," Doha said softly. "But it looks lonely." Yuna glanced at him. "Everything looks lonely to you." He smiled but did not argue. The Horizon landed on a platform outside the royal palace. The palace itself was enormous, a structure of spiraling towers and floating bridges. It looked like a frozen waterfall that had been turned into a building. Kethrani guards waited for them. They were tall and slender, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their eyes were large and silver, and they moved without making any sound. They did not speak. They simply gestured for the humans to follow. The walk to the throne room took a long time. The hallways were wide and empty. There were no decorations, no paintings, no signs of life. Just endless walls of pale crystal. Finally, they reached a massive door that opened on its own. The throne room was vast. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. In the center of the room, on a throne made of black crystal, sat Queen Vela. She was not what Doha had expected. She looked almost human, except for the faint silver patterns that moved beneath her skin like living tattoos. Her hair was white and fell past her shoulders like silk. Her eyes were the color of winter storms, gray and cold and endless. She was beautiful. But her beauty was the kind that made you want to step back, not forward. "Welcome to Kethra Prime," she said. Her voice was low and smooth, like ice sliding over stone. "I am Vela, Eternal Queen of the Kethrani Empire." Commander Sunwoo stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, we are honored by your invitation. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity." The Queen studied him for a moment. Then her eyes moved across the group, examining each human one by one. Her expression did not change. She looked neither impressed nor disappointed. She simply looked. "I have studied your species," she said. "You are young, short-lived, emotional. You have achieved faster than light travel only recently. Many in the Galactic Accord believe you are not ready. Sungwoo kept his voice steady. We are eager to prove ourselves, Your Majesty. Perhaps. Vela leaned back on her throne. You will stay here for 10 days. I will observe. I will decide. That is all. She waved her hand, and the audience was over. The humans were taken to their quarters. The rooms were large and comfortable, but they felt empty somehow. The walls were too smooth. The lights were too even. There was no warmth anywhere. That night, while the others slept, Doha could not rest. He wandered the hallways, trying to understand the ship's environmental systems. Something was wrong with the air circulation in the guest wing. It was his job to fix it. He followed the pipes and wires through corridors he was probably not supposed to enter. He did not mean to go far. But the palace was like a maze, and soon he realized he was lost. He turned a corner and found himself standing in front of a large door that was slightly open. Curiosity pulled him forward. He pushed the door and stepped inside, thought it was a garden. Or at least it had been a garden once. The room was huge, with a glass ceiling that showed the stars above. There were beds of soil arranged in circles, and trellises that reached toward the sky. But everything was dying. The plants were withered and brown. The flowers had crumbled to dust. The air smelled stale and forgotten. Doha walked slowly through the dead garden. His heart ached. Someone had built this place with love a long time ago. Someone had cared. But now it was abandoned. He knelt beside a small plant in the corner. It was barely alive, just a few gray leaves clinging to a thin stem. Without thinking, he began to clear away the dead material around it. He checked the soil with his fingers. Dry, completely dry. He found a water source nearby and carefully gave the plant a drink. He did not know if it would help, but he had to try. What are you doing here? The voice cut through the silence like a blade. Doha turned and saw Queen Vela standing in the doorway. She wore a simple robe instead of her formal gown, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. Without her throne, she looked smaller somehow, but her eyes were just as cold. I am sorry, Doha said quickly, standing up. I was lost. The door was open. I did not mean to intrude. Vela walked toward him slowly. Her eyes moved to the dying plant he had been tending. You are wasting your time. This garden died centuries ago. Nothing can save it. Maybe, Doha said. But I had to try. She tilted her head, studying him like he was a strange insect. Why? These plants mean nothing to you. They are not from your world. They will not live long enough to matter. Doha looked at the small plant, then back at the queen. Nothing alive is insignificant, he said simply. Everything deserves a chance. For a long moment, Vela said nothing. Her silver eyes searched his face, looking for something he did not understand. Then she turned away. Leave this place. Do not return. Doha bowed and walked toward the door. But before he left, he looked back one last time. The queen stood alone in her dead garden, staring at the small plant he had watered. She did not look angry anymore. She looked sad. The next morning, Queen Vela summoned the human delegation to the council chamber. The room was circular, with seats arranged in rising rows like a theater. Holographic screens floated in the air, displaying maps of the galaxy and data about Earth. Commander Sungwoo stood in the center, facing the queen and her advisors. The advisors were old Kethrani with gray skin and tired eyes. They had served the throne for centuries, and they looked at the humans with barely hidden doubt. Tell me, Vela said, her voice echoing through the chamber. Why should the Kethrani Empire support humanity's entry into the Galactic Accord? Sungwoo clasped his hands behind his back. Your Majesty, humanity brings new perspectives. We are creative. We adapt quickly. We have achieved in 200 years what many species took 2,000 to accomplish. One of the advisors laughed softly. And how long do your people live? 80 years? 90? What can a species that dies so quickly possibly offer the galaxy? The question was meant to hurt. Doha, standing at the back of the room with the other support staff, felt his jaw tighten. But Sunwoo did not flinch. We live with urgency, Sunwoo replied. We do not have the luxury of waiting. That makes us act. That makes us bold. Vela's expression remained unchanged. Bold is another word for reckless. The Galactic Accord has stood for 50,000 years because its members are patient. Because they think in centuries, not decades. The discussion continued for hours. The advisors asked about Earth's military strength, its resources, its technology. Every answer seemed to disappoint them. Humanity was too young, too weak, too fragile. By the end of the meeting, Doha could see the frustration in Sunwoo's eyes. The commander hit it well, but it was there. As the humans filed out of the chamber, Yuna walked beside her brother. That went terribly, she muttered. They've already decided we are not good enough. Maybe, Doha said quietly. Or maybe they just do not understand us yet. Yuna shook her head. You always look for hope where there is none. That evening, Doha made a decision. He found one of the palace attendants, a young Kathrani with kind eyes named Sarah. She was different from the others, less cold, more curious about the human visitors. I want to ask a favor, Doha said. The garden I found last night, the dying one. May I tend to it? I will not disturb anything. I just want to help. Sarah looked surprised. That garden belonged to someone the queen loved long ago. No one is allowed inside. I know, but the plants are still alive. Some of them, at least. They just need care. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. I will not stop you. But if the queen discovers you there, I cannot protect you. I understand. And so, each evening after his duties were complete, Doha slipped away to the forgotten garden. He worked in silence, clearing dead leaves and testing the soil. The environmental systems in the garden were broken, so he repaired them. The water supply was blocked, so he cleaned it. Slowly, carefully, he brought life back to the dying space. While he worked, he hummed old songs. They were simple melodies his grandmother had taught him when he was a child. Songs about mountains and rivers, about love and loss, about the passing of seasons. The words were Korean, but the feelings were universal. He did not know that Queen Vela watched him in her private chambers. The queen had access to every surveillance system in the palace. She told herself she was monitoring the humans for security reasons. She needed to understand them, to find their weaknesses. But night after night, she found herself watching the same human. The quiet one. The engineer. He would kneel in the dirt like a servant, his hands gentle as he touched dying plants. He would sing songs in a language she did not understand. And somehow, impossibly, the garden was responding. New leaves appeared on branches that had been bare for centuries. Color returned to flowers she had forgotten existed. The air in the garden grew fresher, cleaner. It made no sense. The garden had been dead for 300 years. She had ordered it sealed because she could not bear to watch it decay. And now, a human, a creature who would live less than a century, was bringing it back to life. Why? What did he gain from it? She searched for an explanation. Perhaps he wanted to impress her. Perhaps he hoped to gain political favor. Perhaps it was some clever human trick. But when she watched his face, she saw none of those things. She saw only peace, only care, only a strange kind of love for things he had no reason to love. It disturbed her. She did not understand humans who gave without expecting something in return. Meanwhile, Yuna noticed that her brother was disappearing every evening. She followed him one night and found him in the garden, covered in dirt, humming their grandmother's songs. "Doha," she hissed, grabbing his arm. "What are you doing? This is clearly a restricted area. If the queen finds out, she could have you executed." "She will not execute me for watering plants," Doha said calmly. "You do not know that. She is 800 years old. Who knows what she considers a crime? You are risking everything for some flowers." Doha wiped the dirt from his hands and looked at his sister. "Yuna, have you noticed how empty this palace is? There are thousands of rooms, but no one lives in them. There are gardens, but they are all dead. There is a queen, but she has no one beside her. So she seems lonely to me." He paused. "When grandmother was dying, she stopped taking care of her garden. Remember? She said there was no point anymore. She had given up." Yuna's expression softened. She remembered. "I think the queen gave up a long time ago," Doha continued. "I think she stopped caring about things because she was tired of losing them. But that is no way to live, even if you live forever." Yuna sighed. "You cannot save everyone, Doha. I am not trying to save everyone. I am just trying to save a garden." He smiled gently. "And maybe remind someone that beauty still exists." Yuna wanted to argue. She wanted to drag her brother back to their quarters and lock him inside. But she knew that look in his eyes. He would not stop. "Fine," she said. "But I am staying with you. If you are going to get in trouble, I am going to be there to help you escape." They worked together that night, brother and sister, under the cold light of alien stars. They did not speak much. They did not need to dot far above them. In her dark chamber, Queen Vela watched. She had the power to stop them. She could send guards. She could have them arrested. Instead, she did nothing. She sat in the darkness, watching a human save a garden that had meant everything to her once. A garden she had allowed to die because she could not face the memories it held. And for the first time in centuries, she felt something stir inside her. A small, uncomfortable feeling she did not want to name. She told herself it was only curiosity. She told herself it meant nothing. But when she finally turned off the surveillance screen and went to bed, she dreamed of flowers. She dreamed of sunlight. She dreamed of a time before she had become frozen. And when she woke, her pillow was wet with tears. She did not remember crying. On the fifth night, Queen Vela held a formal banquet for the human delegation. It was tradition, she explained, for the Kethrani to share a meal with potential allies. The truth was different. She wanted to study the humans more closely. She wanted to understand the strange creatures who confused her. The banquet hall was magnificent. Long tables stretched across a floor of polished black crystal. Floating lights drifted overhead like captured stars. Food from 100 worlds was arranged on silver plates. Beautiful and strange, the humans sat together at one end of the table. The Kethrani advisors sat at the other. Queen Vela sat alone at the head, watching everything with her cold silver eyes. For the first hour, the conversation was polite and meaningless. The advisors asked questions about Earth's climate, its oceans, its animals. The humans answered carefully, always trying to impress, always failing to break through the Kethrani's distant courtesy. Then Vela raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "I have a question," she said. Her eyes moved across the humans until they found Doha. "For you." The engineer. Doha felt his heart skip. He had hoped to remain invisible. He was not a diplomat. He was not important. But the Queen was looking directly at him, and he could not hide. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing his head. "I have been thinking about your species," Vela continued. "You form attachments, deep emotional bonds with other beings, with places, with objects. You call it love." Doha nodded slowly. "Yes, we do. But you know these attachments will end. You know that everyone you love will die. Everything you build will crumble. Yet you continue to love anyway. She leaned forward slightly. Why? The room was completely silent. Even the other humans looked uncomfortable. This was not a diplomatic question. This was something personal. Doha took a breath. He thought about his grandmother's garden. He thought about his parents, who had died when he was young. He thought about Yuna, who he loved more than anything in the universe. Because loss gives meaning to presence, he said slowly. We love because our time is short, not in spite of it. Vela's eyes narrowed. That makes no sense. Why invest in something you know you will lose? It is inefficient. It is painful. It is painful, Doha agreed. But pain is not the opposite of joy. They exist together. You cannot have one without the other. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The ache of goodbye makes every hello sacred. If we lived forever, maybe we would stop caring. Maybe everything would become dull and gray. But because our time is limited, every moment matters. The advisors exchanged glances. They did not understand. To them, the humans' words were nonsense. Emotion was weakness. Attachment was a chain. But Vela did not look away from Doha. Something flickered in her ancient eyes. Something she tried to hide. You believe that pain has value, she said quietly. I believe that avoiding pain means avoiding life, Doha replied. And that is a greater tragedy than any loss. The queen said nothing more. She turned away and signaled for the banquet to continue. But the atmosphere had changed. Something had shifted in the room, though no one could say exactly what. Later that night, after the humans had returned to their quarters, Vela walked alone through the palace. Her feet carried her without thought, down corridors she had not visited in years. She stopped in front of the garden door. She could hear movement inside, footsteps, the soft sound of humming. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The change was remarkable. Where there had been death, there was now life. Small green shoots pushed through the soil. Vines climbed the ancient trellises. And in the corner, where she had last seen Doha kneeling, a single flower had bloomed. It was pale violet, with petals so delicate they seemed made of light. Vela stood frozen. She knew this flower. She had planted it herself 4,000 years ago with someone she had loved. Someone who had died in a war she could barely remember now. She had tried to keep the flower alive after he was gone, but eventually, the pain was too great. She had let it die, along with everything else. Now it was alive again. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. Doha stood in the doorway, a watering can in his hands. He froze when he saw her. Your Majesty, he said quickly. I can explain. You did this, she said. Her voice was strange, even to her own ears. Not angry, not cold. Something else entirely. Doha set down the watering can. I repaired the environmental systems. The plants did the rest. They wanted to live. They just needed someone to help them. Vela looked at the violet flower. Her chest felt tight. Memories flooded through her. Memories she had buried for centuries. A laughing face. A warm hand in hers. A promise that was never kept. I told you not to come back here, she whispered. I know. Doha's voice was gentle. But I could not let them die. Not when there was still hope. Hope. The word sounded foreign on her tongue. I stopped believing in hope a long time ago. Doha walked slowly toward her, stopping a few feet away. He looked at the flower, then at the queen. May I ask what this garden meant to you? Vela was silent for a long moment. She should not answer. She should order him away, perhaps even punish him for his disobedience. But the words came anyway, pulled from somewhere deep inside her. It was built by someone I loved, she said. A warrior named Taiwan. He was Kithrani, but he was different from the others. He felt things deeply. He believed in beauty and joy and all the foolish things our people learn to suppress. She touched one of the violet petals with a trembling finger. He planted this flower on the day we met. He said it would bloom as long as our love was true. What happened to him? War. There is always war, somewhere in the galaxy. He went to fight. He did not return. Vela's voice hardened. That was 4,000 years ago. I swore I would never feel that pain again. I closed my heart. I let everything die. Doha did not offer sympathy. He did not say meaningless words about time healing wounds. He simply stood beside her, looking at the flower. The flower is blooming again, he said quietly. It should not be. It makes no sense. Maybe, Doha said. It was waiting for someone to give it a reason to bloom. Vela looked at him. His face was open and honest. There was no fear in his eyes, no calculation, no hidden agenda. He was simply a man who cared about living things. A man who saw beauty where others saw only death. You are a strange human, she said. I have been told that before. For the first time in 800 years, Queen Vela smiled. It was small, just a slight curve of her lips. But it was real. You may continue to tend the garden, she said. But you will tell no one. This place is private. Doha bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. At the banquet, you said the ache of goodbye makes every hello sacred. Did you mean that? With all my heart. Vela did not respond. She walked out into the corridor and disappeared into the darkness. But something had changed. The ice around her heart had cracked, just slightly. And through that crack, warmth was beginning to seep in. She did not know whether to fear it or welcome it. She only knew that, for the first time in centuries, she felt alive. The 10 days ended, but the humans did not leave. Queen Vela announced that she required more time to evaluate humanity's worthiness. She gave no other explanation. Her advisors were confused. In 800 years of rule, the queen had never delayed a decision. She was known for her certainty, her quick judgment, her absolute confidence. Now she seemed uncertain, distracted. Different. Commander. Sungwoo accepted the extension gratefully. He did not question the reason. More time meant more opportunity to prove themselves. But Yuna noticed something strange. Each morning, the queen asked for a detailed report on the human delegation's activities. And each time, she listened most carefully to the parts about Doha. She is watching him, Yuna told her brother one evening. I do not know why, but she is definitely interested in you. Doha shrugged. I am just tending a garden. There is nothing interesting about that. A garden no one was supposed to enter. A garden she kept locked for 300 years. Yuna crossed her arms. Doha, what exactly happens when you go there at night? I work. I water plants. Sometimes she comes to watch. We talk a little. You talk? To the eternal queen of the Kethrani Empire? About what? Doha thought for a moment. About flowers. About time. About why things matter. Yuna stared at him like he had grown a second head. You are having philosophical conversations with an 800-year-old alien queen. In a secret garden. At night. When you say it that way, it sounds strange. It is strange. Everything about this is strange. But Yuna could not help smiling. Her brother had always been different. He saw the world in ways others could not. Maybe that was exactly what the queen needed. A few days later, the palace began preparing for a celebration. Lights were hung from every tower. Musicians rehearsed in the great halls. Even the cold Kethrani advisors seemed slightly less serious than usual. Doha asked Sira, the kind attendant, about the preparations. It is the festival of eternal stars, she explained. Once every 100 years, we honor those who have passed. We light beacons that will burn for centuries, carrying our memories to the sky. That sounds beautiful. Syrah's expression grew sad. It is, but the queen always spends the festival alone. She has no one left to remember with her. Everyone she loved died long ago. That night, Doha lay awake thinking. The festival sounded similar to something from home. In Korea, there was a tradition called the Jinju Namgang Yudung, the Lantern Festival. People would make paper lanterns and float them on the river. The lanterns carried wishes and prayers for the dead. They were beautiful and brief, glowing for only a few minutes before drifting away. An idea formed in his mind. The next morning, he gathered materials. Paper from the human supplies. Thin wire, a small candle. He worked carefully, folding and shaping until he had created a simple lantern. It was rough and imperfect, nothing like the grand Kethrani beacons. But it was his. On the night of the festival, the sky above Kethra Prime was filled with light. Great pillars of fire rose from every city, burning with colors that human eyes could barely comprehend. The Kethrani stood in silence, heads bowed, remembering those they had lost over millennia. Doha found Queen Vela alone on a balcony overlooking the capital. She wore a simple white gown, and her hair was loose in the wind. Without her crown and formal robes, she looked younger somehow. More vulnerable. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "You should be with your delegation," she said. "This festival is not for humans. I know." Doha walked toward her, holding the paper lantern in his hands. "But I made something for you." Vela looked at the object with confusion. "What is it?" "A lantern. From my world. We float them on rivers or release them into the sky to honor the dead." He held it out to her. "I thought you might like to light one." She took the lantern carefully, turning it over in her hands. "It is made of paper. It will burn up in minutes. Yes, our beacons lost for centuries. They carry memories through time itself. This," she gestured at the fragile paper, "this will disappear almost instantly." "That is the point," Doha said softly. Vela looked at him, waiting for an explanation. "The beacons are beautiful," Doha continued, "but they are forever. They never change. They never let go." He pointed at the lantern in her hands. "This is different. You light it, you watch it rise, and then it is gone. It teaches you that some things are beautiful because they do not last, because they are meant to be released." The queen was silent for a long time. She stared at the small paper lantern, so fragile in her ancient hands. "You think I'm holding on too tightly," she said quietly. "To my grief, to my loneliness. I think grief is natural. But I also think the people we love would want us to live, not just exist." Doha's voice was gentle. "You have been alone for 800 years. Maybe it is time to let some of that go." Vela's jaw tightened. For a moment, Doha thought he had gone too far. He waited for her anger, for her cold dismissal. Instead, she reached for the candle at the lantern's base. A small flame appeared on her fingertip, a spark of fire she conjured from the air itself. She touched the flame to the wick. The lantern began to glow. Vela held it for a moment, looking at the warm light inside. Then, slowly, she released it. The paper lantern floated upward, drifting on the gentle wind. It rose past the balcony, past the towers, past the great Kethrani beacons. It was tiny compared to those eternal flames, insignificant, easily ignored. But Vela could not look away from it. The lantern climbed higher and higher until it was just a small golden dot against the endless stars. Then, with a final flicker, it burned out and disappeared. Gone. Just like that, Vela felt something break inside her. Not in a painful way, in a releasing way. Like a chain finally snapping free. Tears began to fall down her cheeks. She did not try to stop them. She did not even notice them at first. "I have not cried since Taiwan died," she whispered. "I thought I had forgotten how." Doha stood beside her, saying nothing. He did not try to comfort her with words. He simply stayed, a warm presence in the cold night. They stood together on the balcony as the festival continued around them. The great beacons burned. The Kethrani mourned in their silent, eternal way. But on this balcony, something different was happening. An ancient queen was learning to feel again. And a quiet human was showing her how. After a long time, Vela spoke again. "Why do you care what happens to me? I am nothing to you. Your species will be gone before I reach the end of my middle years. Why invest in someone you will never truly know?" Doha smiled. "Because right now, in this moment, we are both here. That is enough. That is more than enough." Vela looked at him with eyes that had seen thousands of years of history. Eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. Eyes that had grown cold and hard and empty. For the first time, warmth flickered in those eyes. "You are very strange, Kang Doha," she said. "So I have been told." She laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from centuries of disuse. But it was real. And standing there, under the eternal stars, with the ashes of a paper lantern drifting in the wind, the Eternal Queen felt something she had sworn never to feel again. She felt hope. The Galactic Accord was not happy. Word had spread that Queen Vela was considering accepting humanity into the Alliance. This news did not sit well with everyone. Some species had spent centuries building their power within the Accord. They did not want to share it with a young, unpredictable race like humans. The Varric Dominion was especially displeased. The Varric were a reptilian species who believed in strength above all else. They saw humans as weak, emotional, and dangerous. They feared that humanity's chaotic nature would destabilize the careful balance of the galaxy. Lord Kithan, the Varric ambassador, sent secret messages to allies across the Accord. Something had to be done. If Vela would not reject humanity on her own, perhaps she needed to be reminded of why humans were unworthy. The plan was simple. An attack on the human delegation would prove that they were targets for violence. It would show the galaxy that accepting humans meant accepting the conflicts that followed them. And if a few humans died in the process, that was an acceptable price. A council meeting was scheduled on the neutral station orbiting Kethra Prime. Representatives from a dozen species would attend. Commander Sunwoo was invited to present humanity's case for membership. Doha was not supposed to attend. He was just an engineer. But at the last minute, one of the technical advisors fell ill, and Doha was asked to fill in. He would manage the presentation equipment and nothing more. Queen Vela would attend via holographic projection. She claimed she had duties that prevented her from leaving the planet. The truth was that she wanted to watch Doha without being obvious about it. The council chamber was vast, with seats arranged in a circle around a central speaking platform. Representatives from the Varric, the Alari, the Christine, and 8 other species filled the room. Their eyes were curious, suspicious, or openly hostile as the humans entered. Commander Sunwoo walked to the center platform with calm confidence. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. Behind him, Doha quietly set up the holographic displays. The presentation began well. Sunwoo spoke about humanity's accomplishments, their rapid advancement, their desire for peace. The representatives listened, some nodding, others frowning. Lord Kithan sat in the Varric section, his yellow eyes fixed on the humans. Beneath his robes, a signal device rested against his scales. One press of a button would set everything in motion. Doha finished setting up the displays and stepped back into the shadows. He was supposed to remain invisible, just another piece of equipment. But something caught his attention. A small drone was hovering near the ceiling, almost invisible against the dark panels. It was positioned directly above Commander Sunwoo. Doha's stomach tightened. During his engineering training, he had learned about weapon systems from across the galaxy. He recognized the drone's design. It was a Varic assassin unit, designed to deliver a single fatal energy blast. He had seconds to act. The drone's light pulsed, preparing the fire. Doha did not think. He did not calculate the odds or consider the consequences. He simply moved. He sprinted towards Sunwoo, covering the distance in 3 powerful strides. The commander turned, confusion on his face. Behind him, the drone fired. Doha slammed into Sunwoo, pushing him aside. The energy blast caught Doha in the chest. Pain. Unimaginable pain. His body flew backward, crashing against the floor. He heard screaming, shouting, chaos erupting around him. But it all seemed far away, muffled by the ringing in his ears. He tried to breathe. He could not. Queen Vela watched through her holographic projection as the human crumpled to the floor. For a moment, she did not understand what had happened. The scene was too fast, too chaotic. Then she saw the blood spraying beneath Doha's body. She saw the burn mark on his chest where the energy blast had struck. Something inside. Her shattered dot. She shut down the projection instantly. Within seconds, she was striding through the palace, shouting orders. A shuttle was prepared. Medical teams were mobilized. She was going to the station herself. Her advisors tried to stop her. It was too dangerous. The assassination could have been aimed at her. But Vela did not listen. She pushed past them with a strength that surprised everyone, including herself. The journey to the station took forever. Vela paced the shuttle, her hands shaking. She told herself it was anger. A member of a delegation under her protection had been attacked. This was a political disaster. This was an insult to the Kethrani Empire. But she knew the truth. The cold, terrible truth. She cared about the human. Not because of politics. Not because of diplomacy. She cared about him because he had made her feel alive again. When she arrived at the medical bay, she found Yuna standing outside, her face streaked with tears. Commander Sunwoo stood nearby, his uniform stained with Doha's blood. He had not been injured. The human engineer had saved his life. "Your Majesty," Sunwoo said, bowing deeply. "I do not know why you have come, but where is he?" Vila demanded. Sunwoo hesitated, then pointed to the door behind him. "The doctors are working on him. They say his injuries are severe. They do not know if he will survive." Vela walked past him without another word. She entered the medical bay, ignoring the startled looks of the medical staff. They were not Kethrani, but they recognized her. Everyone in the galaxy knew the Eternal Queen. Doha lay on a table, surrounded by machines. His chest was covered in bandages stained red. His face was pale, so pale that he almost looked gray. His eyes were closed. Vela stood beside the table, looking down at him. She did not touch him. She did not speak. She simply stood there, frozen, as the machines beeped and hummed. The door opened behind her. Yuna entered, her face twisted with anger and grief. "Why are you here?" Yuna demanded. Her voice was sharp, almost hostile. "He is nothing to you. He's just a human, right? Just a short-lived creature who will be gone in a blink of your eternal eyes." Vela did not turn around. She kept her gaze fixed on Doha's still face. "He saved a life today," she said quietly. He did not hesitate. He did not calculate. He simply moved, knowing he might die. "That is what he does," Yuna said, her voice cracking. "He cares about everyone. He gives everything, even when it costs him." "Why?" Vela whispered. "Why would he sacrifice himself for someone else?" Yuna laughed bitterly. "Because that is what love looks like. Real love. Not the cold, safe kind that never risks anything. The kind that throws itself into fire for people it barely knows." Vela finally turned to face her. Tears were forming in the queen's silver eyes. Tears she had not shed since the night of the festival. "I am here," she said slowly, "because he is not nothing. He is not insignificant. He is—" She paused, struggling to find the words. "He is the first person in centuries who made me want to live instead of just exist." Una stared at her. The anger faded from her face, replaced by something softer. Something like understanding. "Then help him live," Una said. "Your empire has the best medical technology in the galaxy. Save him." Vela nodded. She turned to the medical staff and began giving orders. The best doctors, the most advanced treatments, resources that no human had ever been offered. She would not let him die. She could not, because losing him now, after finally learning to feel again, would be worse than the 4,000 years of emptiness that came before. She sat beside his bed as the doctors worked. She held his cold hand in hers and whispered words in the ancient Kethrani language. Prayers she had not spoken since she was young. Promises she had never thought she would make again. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please, I am not ready to say goodbye." The machines beeped. The doctors worked. And somewhere in the space between life and death, Doha dreamed of a garden filled with flowers. Doha woke slowly, like rising from deep water. At first, there was only white. A blank ceiling. Soft lights. The hum of machines. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, disconnected from his mind. Then the pain came. A dull ache in his chest that pulsed with every heartbeat. He remembered the blast, the impact, the fall. He remembered thinking he was going to die, but he had not died. A face appeared above him. Silver eyes, white hair, pale skin marked with shifting patterns. Queen Vela looked down at him with an expression he had never seen before. Relief. Fear. Something deeper that she was trying to hide. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "How long?" Doha managed to whisper. 4 days. The damage was severe. You nearly died 3 times. She paused. "My doctors saved you. I brought the best in the Empire." Doha tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. Thank yourself for being foolish enough to throw your body in front of an energy blast." "Commander Sunwoo, is he safe?" "He is alive because of you. The assassin has been captured. The Varic Dominion claims no involvement, but we both know the truth." Vela's expression hardened briefly. "They will face consequences." Doha nodded weakly. He was too tired to think about politics. Too tired to think about anything, except the fact that he was alive. And Vela was sitting beside him. Over the following weeks, Doha slowly recovered. The Kethrani medical technology was remarkable, healing wounds that would have killed him on Earth. But the process was long and painful. He spent most of his time in bed, drifting between sleep and waking. Vela visited him every day. At first, she came under the excuse of diplomatic observation. She needed to monitor his recovery, she claimed. The attack had happened under her protection, so his well-being was her responsibility. But the excuses grew thinner as the days passed. She stopped pretending. She simply came to see him. They talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. She told him about her childhood, thousands of years ago, when the Kethrani Empire was young and wild. She told him about the wars she had fought, the enemies she had destroyed, the allies she had lost. She told him about Taiwan, the warrior who had loved her, who had built a garden to make her smile. Doha listened to it all. He did not judge. He did not offer solutions. He simply listened, and sometimes he held her hand. In return, he told her about Earth, about the small village where he grew up, surrounded by mountains and rice fields. About his grandmother, who had taught him to love growing things. About his parents, who had died in an accident when he was 12. About Yuna, who had taken care of him ever since. You have experienced much loss for someone so young, Vela observed one evening. Everyone experiences loss, Doha replied. The difference is what we do with it. And what did you do? He thought for a moment. I decided to create more than I destroyed. To plant more than I uprooted. To love more than I feared. Vela looked at him with those ancient eyes. How? After everything you lost, how did you find the courage? It was not courage. It was necessity. Doha shifted, wincing at the pain in his chest. When my parents died, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to stop feeling. But Yuna needed me. My grandmother needed me. The garden needed me. So I kept going. And eventually, the going became living. They sat in silence for a while. The machines hummed softly around them. I have lived for 800 years, Vela finally said. I have seen things no human will ever see. I have ruled an empire that spans 1,000 worlds. And yet, in all that time, I have never met anyone like you. Because I water plants and make paper lanterns? Because you feel everything. Because you care about everything. Because you throw yourself in front of weapons for people you barely know. A voice dropped. Because you made me feel again, after I had sworn never to feel. Doha reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, but he could feel a faint pulse beneath. A heartbeat. Slow and steady, but real. You are not broken, he said quietly. You are just tired. You have been carrying grief for 4,000 years, and it has made you heavy. But you do not have to carry it alone anymore. Vela's composure cracked. Tears began to fall, silver and shining in the dim light. She did not try to stop them. I am afraid, she whispered. I am afraid of losing you. You will live for what, 60 more years? 70? That is nothing. That is a single breath in my existence. And when you are gone, I will have to go on. Alone. Again. Doha squeezed her hand. Then we make those years count. We fill them with so much life, so much joy, that they feel like centuries. And when it ends? When you die, and I remain? Then you remember. You keep the garden alive. You light paper lanterns every year. You tell stories about the strange human who made an eternal queen laugh. His eyes were gentle, steady. Loss is not the enemy. Forgetting is. As long as you remember, I will never truly be gone. Vela looked at him for a long time. The galaxy spun around them, vast and cold and endless. Empires rose and fell. Stars were born and died. Time stretched forward into infinity. But in this room, in this moment, there was only the two of them. An ancient queen and a dying man. A goddess and a gardener. I do not deserve you, she said finally. Probably not, Doha replied with a weak smile. But you have me anyway. She laughed through her tears. It was the most beautiful sound Doha had ever heard. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. Her skin was cool, but her breath was warm. Her silver eyes closed, and for a moment, she was not a queen. She was just a woman, tired and lonely, and finally ready to love again. I thought I was strong, she murmured. I thought closing my heart made me powerful. But I was wrong. I was not strong. I was just empty. And now? Now I am terrified. She opened her eyes. But I would rather be terrified with you than safe alone. Doha lifted his hand and touched her cheek. Then stay with me. However long we have. However much it hurts. She nodded, tears still falling. I will stay, she promised. I will stay. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and eternal. Empires rose and fell. Species were born and went extinct. The universe continued its endless, indifferent dance. But in that small room, Two hearts that had been broken found each other and for the first time in 4,000 years, the Eternal Queen believed that love was worth the pain. The Great Hall of the Galactic Accord had never been so full. Representatives from every member species had gathered to witness the ceremony. Holographic screens broadcast the event to billions of worlds. This was history in the making, and everyone wanted to see it. Queen Vela stood at the center of the speaking platform, dressed in the formal robes of the Kithrani Empire. The silver patterns on her skin glowed softly, marking her as royalty. Her crown rested on her white hair, ancient and heavy with centuries of tradition. But her eyes were different. Those who knew her, who had served her for hundreds of years, noticed immediately. The coldness was gone. The emptiness had been filled with something new, something alive. "I have ruled the Kithrani Empire for 800 years, she began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. In that time, I have evaluated countless species for membership in the Galactic Accord. I have accepted some. I have rejected many. I have always based my decisions on logic, on calculation, on the cold equations of power." She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly. "Today, I choose differently. Today, I recommend humanity for full membership in the Galactic Accord. Not because of their military strength, which is modest. Not because of their technology, which is young. Not because of their resources, which are limited." Lord Kithen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The other Vurek representatives exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected. "I recommend humanity because of their hearts," Vela continued. "Because of their capacity to love in the face of certain loss. Because of their courage to feel when feeling means pain. Because of their stubborn, beautiful insistence that every moment matters." She looked across the assembly, meeting the eyes of representatives from 100 different species. "We in the Accord have lived long. Some of us have existed for millions of years. We have learned to be patient, to be careful, to protect ourselves from the chaos of emotion. But in doing so, we have forgotten something important. We have forgotten how to live." A voice softened, but it still carried to every corner of the hall. "Humanity will burn briefly compared to us. They will live and die in what feels like an instant. But in that instant, they will love more fiercely, dream more boldly, and fight more desperately than we ever have. They will remind us what it means to be alive." She straightened, her decision made. "I vote yes for humanity's inclusion. Let those who disagree speak now." Silence. Lord Kithen opened his mouth, then closed it. The evidence of the assassination attempt had been revealed to all. The Varak had no credibility left. One by one, the other representatives voted. Some hesitated. Some voted no. But the majority followed the Queen's lead. When the final count was announced, humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Accord. The human delegation erupted in cheers. Commander Sunwoo bowed deeply, his eyes wet with tears he tried to hide. Yuna grabbed the nearest person and hugged them, laughing and crying at the same time. Doha stood at the back of the human section, still recovering from his injuries. He watched the celebration with a quiet smile. He was proud of his species, proud of what they had accomplished. But mostly, he was watching Vela. She found his eyes across the crowded hall. For a moment, the noise and chaos faded away. There was only the two of them, connected by something that transcended species and time. She smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. He smiled back. After the ceremony, while diplomats celebrated and deals were made, Vela slipped away from the crowd. She found Doha waiting in the garden, their garden, surrounded by flowers that had been dead for centuries. "You gave quite a speech," Doha said as she approached. "I meant every word." She stopped in front of him, close enough to touch. "You changed everything. You changed me. I just watered some plants. You did much more than that. She took his hand in hers. You taught me that being eternal is meaningless if you are not truly living. You taught me that love is worth the pain. You taught me that brief things can be the most beautiful. Doha looked around at the garden. Hundreds of flowers bloomed in colors he had never seen before. Vines climbed ancient trellises, reaching toward the crystal ceiling. Life thrived in every corner. What happens now? He asked. Vey La considered the question. I cannot promise eternity. Your lifespan is a heartbeat compared to mine. When you are gone, I will have to continue. That reality will not change, I know. But I do not want to waste whatever time we have. She stepped closer, her silver eyes searching his face. I have spent 4,000 years running from love because I was afraid of loss. I am done running. I want to spend every moment of your life with you. I want to fill your brief years with enough joy to last me through the centuries that follow. Doha lifted his hand and touched her cheek, just as he had in the medical bay. Then let us make it count. Yes, Vela whispered. Let us make it count. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was gentle at first, hesitant. She had not kissed anyone in 4,000 years. She had forgotten how warm it could be. Then she remembered. And the kiss deepened into something fierce and desperate and alive. Around them, the garden bloomed. Above them, the stars burned. And in that moment, an eternal queen and a mortal man began a love. Story that would be told across the galaxy for millennia. The years that followed were exactly what they had promised. Full, beautiful, brief. Doha continued to tend the garden, even as he grew older. His hair turned gray. His hands became weathered. His movements slowed. But his eyes remained warm, and his heart remained gentle. Vey La stayed by his side through all of it. She learned to count time in moments instead of centuries. She learned to appreciate every sunrise, every conversation, every quiet evening spent among the flowers. They traveled together, visiting worlds that humans had never seen. They laughed together, cried together, built a life together. It was not always easy. An immortal queen and a mortal man faced challenges that most couples could never imagine. But they faced them together. Yuna visited often, watching her brother's unlikely love story with amazement and joy. She had grandchildren who called Vela aunt, and the eternal queen did not correct them. 100 years passed in what felt like a breath. On the last day, Doha lay in the garden, surrounded by flowers he had spent a lifetime tending. He was very old now, his body worn and tired. But his smile was the same as it had always been. Vela sat beside him, holding his hand. She had known this day would come. She had prepared for it for decades. But preparation did not make it easier. Thank you, Doha whispered. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. For staying. For loving me. For letting me love you. Vela's tears fell like silver rain. Thank you for saving me. For teaching me how to live. Remember what I told you, he said. Loss is not the enemy. Forgetting is. Keep the garden alive. Keep telling stories. Keep lighting lanterns. I will, she promised. I will remember you for every moment of my existence. He smiled one last time. That is more than enough. His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. And then, peacefully, the gardener slipped away. Vela held him for a long time. She did not move. She did not speak. She simply sat in the garden they had built together, surrounded by 1,000 blooming flowers. The galaxy expected her to retreat. They expected her to rebuild her walls, to become cold and distant again. That was what she had always done before. Instead, she did something different. She opened the garden to visitors from every world. She named it the Garden of Brief Stars, in honor of the human who had taught her that beauty could be found in things that did not last. Millions came to see it over the centuries that followed. They walked among flowers that should have been extinct. They read the story of the queen and the gardener on plaques of crystal. They listened as guides explained that love could bridge any gap, even the gap between mortality and eternity. And every year, on the anniversary of his death, Vela lit a paper lantern and released it into the sky. She watched it rise, glowing gold against the endless stars. She watched it flicker and burn out and disappear. And she smiled, because she remembered. Because she would always remember. Because brief things she had learned were the most beautiful of all.